And again, it's not about sampling. Producers kept commenting, don't sample, you'll be fine. No, you won't. Again, this is a lawsuit about using a rhythm, copywriting a rhythm, the copyrightability of a drum pattern, not of a sample. So let's make this real. What's going down, everyone? It's DJ Payne One. I'm here with Dame and Aaron, and this is At Odds with EP&D, the podcast, still brought to you by Two Lost. Shout out to Two Lost. And you can now use the code At Odds instead of Payne. So ATODDS when you sign up for Two Lost for 3 full free months of distribution. If you decide not to continue with Two Lost after those 3 months, your music will not be erased. If you decide to continue with Two Lost, it's only $2.99 for all of the following months. And that is a hell of a deal.
And then we also have, once again, the contest going on right now with T-Pain. I'm expecting a lot more entries to kick in once we get back from the holidays. But yeah, and then lastly, we have a private group. We're starting live sessions January 8th. So we're going to put the link in the description of this video. This is for artists or managers. So I'm going to tailor these sessions. Anybody will be able to ask a question. However, I'm going to start off by saying, like, those that are less experienced, hold off on your questions and just start listening to the dialogue of the people that have a little bit more experience. Not to say you can't ask a question, but I want to make sure that the conversations are appropriate for all levels. So for those that have more questions that are more beginning, just hold off maybe until the end so you can listen to the dialogue, because your question might get answered through the discussion of these live sessions. Because I want, again, people that have more experience to get a lot out of these sessions as well. So the link will be in the description of this video. We're going to start our first live session January 8th, and I'm looking forward to that. It's for artists, managers, producers, anybody that's looking to get a foot in the music industry. So I think the first session we'll just talk about, like, how we plan for the year, like what are our plans, how should we be thinking about going into the new year, so that we're not changing things up on a week-to-week basis or feeling unsettled or don't know what we're doing. What is a proper plan? How should we be approaching things? I think that's what we're going to talk about January 8th. So please feel free to join us.
Okay. And Dame's Illuminati group is the app.group.com/Two Lost link. So I'm going to have the regular Two Lost link below, but I'm also going to have the Dame Illuminati. So if you want to join that, then it sounds good to me. I mean, hey, you join a secret society run by Dame, who's basically the guy that pulls all the strings in streaming. If he doesn't like a YouTube comment that you leave, you're done. So it's good to get in with him. I'm joking, by the way. I need to stop being sarcastic because people be in the comments for real like, yo, Dame is really an evil guy, and this is why he's always caping for the streaming companies, because he's worshiping Spotify Satan and he's his right-hand man. So, guys, I know sarcasm isn't for everybody, but I just can't. I've tried to shake it. I can't do it. So here we are.
Yeah. Also, today we're at odds with Aaron's internet. So Aaron, I know Aaron tried to chime in a couple of times. I'm going to let her go. I'm going to wait for her to hear what I said and go ahead.
I'm very much at odds with the internet. I'm back in Atlanta at my parents' house, and this joint is very slow speed, regardless of where I'm at. But since we're moving into the new year, Happy New Year to y'all. When you're listening to this, I'm also rolling out something in the new year. I talked about it last week. I looked at a lot of comments. I've been talking to artists individually. So Dame has a free resource, which is I was about to say the At Odds chat, but the Two Lost conversations. And then I'm rolling out some in-person stuff in Nashville. I'm kind of doing a soft launch of just like an artist crash course. So if you're in Nashville or in the surrounding cities and want to drive in, I'm doing a crash course with my business partner, only 10 people, especially for the first one, because we want it to make sense for everybody. But just really helping you forecast for the year and then achieve the goals that you have. You're going to essentially get 2 music industry experts executives, and we're going to go through your rollout strategy, all the questions that you have about your career, how you plan on monetizing things, ways that we see that you can make more money with things that you're already doing. So I'm also offering a discount to everybody. I'm giving $50 off for the crash course. It's like a from 10 to 4, so almost a full day. And you can do at odds. It's a one word, but if you can DM me if you need it. I'll have the link in my bio when you look. But if you are confused, if you DM me, I'll send you the link to it. But it's a crash course in person. It's called the Soundtrack to the Music Industry. We're doing a crash course in person in Nashville. So if you're close, I'd suggest coming. If you DM me, I may give you a bigger discount because I want more of the at odds / MEC family to pull up. But yeah, in-person crash courses, I feel like I kind of want to do this more. So we're going to see. This is like the prototype event. And then also I've been reading y'all's comments. Everybody's asking about rollout strategy and promo. So we will definitely be discussing that in person, but more on the podcast as well.
Oh boy, I have a lot to talk about today. When I first heard of the big lawsuit against basically the entire reggaeton and certain pop genres as well, subgenres, it was shocking. I want to revisit that conversation. I mean, it's still shocking, and it may very well have a widespread and incredibly heavy impact on the music business as a whole. But admittedly, my initial reaction was pretty dramatic. It seemed like anyone could be sued over drums, and a lot of us were under the impression that a drum pattern or rhythm couldn't be copyrighted. And for the most part, generally, it isn't something that is copyrighted or that holds up in court. But I didn't get the entire picture right. And so we were getting cooked in the comments. I guess when I say we, I mean me, because it's like when Dame says something that people are upset about, it's like fuck MEC or fuck at odds. But this time it was me doing it. So there were people on both sides saying, yeah, this lawsuit needs to go through. Payne's an idiot if he thinks it shouldn't go through. And then there were people who were like, Payne's an idiot for even speaking on this because it'll never go through. You can't copyright a drum loop. And when we initially had this conversation in last week's episode, we looked at the lawsuit from a legal standpoint. We looked at the legal implications. I want to go deeper in that today, but we also, I think because of the shock of this lawsuit, especially the way it was reported, we ignored a lot of the cultural contentions that are connected to this legal battle. And I think that's important too. And so a lot of people chimed in, a lot of people that clip, I don't know why that clip in particular went viral, but it did. So we're finally viral. And it's bittersweet. One artist who responded in particular, Ed Lee Shine, who's a legend in that musical space. And I'm sure we all listened to at least one of his songs or his group songs when we were younger. It struck me after reading his comments, and we had a dialogue, and I asked him some questions, and I appreciate his responses. But in looking at a lot of the responses, especially from Jamaican artists or just Jamaican fans of dancehall in general, that a lot of the opposition has to do with this sense of appropriation. So the feeling that reggaeton artists, pop artists, Western artists in general took a dancehall rhythm, made billions and billions of dollars off of it, and never really reached out back to Jamaica. I can't speak on that because I don't live in the Caribbean, and I never have. And so that was an angle that I hadn't considered. And a lot of people are saying, you took this from Jamaica, give it back or give us something. So to go beyond that, and I've noticed this before, I think I've even commented on this in the podcast as a dancehall fan. I hear pop songs all the time that are just dancehall tracks, but they're made by non-Jamaican artists and producers, and they become hits. I was shocked actually when Taliban's became a hit in the United States because it's a pretty authentic modern dancehall song, and Americans tend not to listen to or even know what dancehall is. Like if you ask them, hey, what kind of music does Sean Paul make? I don't know, dance. So, but actually with the Taliban, the Byron Messiah song, a lot of people were like, oh, that's Afrobeat. even though he literally says in the song, I mean, loosely translated from Jamaican English to Standard American, don't forget I was born in Kingston. So that's Jamaica. I understand a lot of us North Americans don't know anything about geography, though. But pioneers of dancehall, especially Steely and Clevie, who are the two plaintiffs in the one of them has passed away, unfortunately, rest in peace. But his estate is part of this lawsuit. And my opinion is that they deserve something. I don't know what they deserve. I think it's a tragedy that reggaeton is just dancehall with a different name and yet has generated more money and notoriety than dancehall has. It strikes me as strange. And that's another conversation to have. Maybe we can have that at some point if we could get somebody from the dance hall space on here. I don't want to have that conversation myself because I'm not in that space. But to me, the scary part of this lawsuit is this. This isn't a lawsuit about sampling a drum pattern. It's about owning a rhythm. And people were saying you can't copyright a rhythm. But that's actually another myth about the music business. You can copyright a drum pattern. You can copyright a rhythm. So a lot of producers and artists are at risk of legal problems because of this, because we didn't realize that. There are actually legal precedents there. And I didn't realize that. I mostly believe the myth that a drum pattern couldn't be copyrighted. I was skeptical because part and parcel with that is, you know, and tell me if I'm wrong. Have you both heard this narrative that you can't copyright a chord progression either?
I have no idea.
Yes.
I don't talk very much during this portion because I don't know too much about this, so I'm just going to shut up.
I feel like that's a commonly held belief, is that you can't copyright a chord progression. That was a belief that I held, so
Yep.
I felt like you're about to enlighten me.
I personally, without giving any information, because he doesn't want me giving that information, I know somebody personally who got in legal trouble for a chord progression. So it's really one of those case by case kind of things where if the chord progression is super distinct for a particular artist or song, yeah, you can get in trouble for it. And I think it also, a lot of people were saying it depends on the judge. And that's absolutely right. You know, it depends on the judge. It depends on who's judging the case, if they're musical or not, you know, but so that's kind of another scary element to this. But there are actually already legal precedents. I mostly, again, believe that a drum pattern couldn't be copyrighted, but I read this really dense article in an academic journal called Copyright Law and the Drummer by Rana Joy Basu. I'm sure I'm butchering his name, Ronojoy Basu. Look it up if you dare. I found it free on an online academic database, which is rare because a lot of those you got to pay for it. But the first example that the paper gives is an interesting one and a recent one, 2015. I didn't know this happened. Dr. Luke, whose name has come up before for worse things on this podcast, was sued over a Jessie J song called, what was the one with B.O.B.?
Price Tag? Was it that one?
I knew Aaron was going to know this. Price Tag. So he reprogrammed and maybe possibly sneaked in a sampled portion of a drum break by Black Heat. And he lost, according to a lawyer on Twitter that I was talking to, whose name I forgot, I'm so sorry. He lost the summary judgment because, as I understand it, number one, the drum beat was unique enough to be considered copyrightable, which is entirely up to the judge, and it's a case by case thing. That's what's scary because it's so unknown. But two, Dr. Luke's defense couldn't cite any other previous music that sounded like that drum beat or sounded enough like that drum beat. They certainly tried because it's Dr. Luke. You know they tried because this was a massive hit. And because they lost the summary judgment, as I understand it, based on what this attorney told me, they settled. So we don't know if they had actually gone to trial, what the implications would have been. But I believe this is still a legal precedent. So maybe this Steely and Clevie lawsuit isn't the first domino like I thought it was. But it is, I imagine, one of the biggest, if not the biggest and most sweeping copyright infringement cases in music business history. And again, it's not about sampling. Producers kept commenting, don't sample, you'll be fine. No, you won't. Again, this is a lawsuit about using a rhythm, copywriting a rhythm, the copyrightability of a drum pattern, not of a sample. So let's make this real. One of the songs, and you can listen to for yourself. I'm not going to play this on the podcast so we get copyright claimed. One of the songs named in the lawsuit is a very famous song that went viral with like the dancing alien. Do you know what I'm talking about? Dame tu cosita was the name of the song, or is the name of the song. It's still kind of big. It was absolutely not a sample of Fish Market, which is the name of the instrumental that Steely and Clevie produced, and they're suing the entire genre of virtually the entire genre of reggaeton for using. It sounded more like a rhythmic interpolation of Dennis the Menace Pounder rhythm. More on that later. I read an Urban Islands article, which is like a dancehall media outlet, and they wrote they are suing for the interpolation of the rhythm, not the melody, not the chords, not the rhythm. So just to be clear, that's what it is. So my concern was always, and I think it was all three of our concerns. Well, Dame said it was ridiculous, but Aaron too. I think my concern is that if the lawsuit is successful, it could inspire a lot of similar lawsuits and serve as a legal precedent for lots of new cases. In the last episode, I said some names. I was like, these artists are going to start suing. These producers are going to start suing. I shouldn't have said that. I apologize to the artists whose names I mentioned because I absolutely don't know if they would sue. And, some of them were upset that I said that because they said they would never do that. And that was wrong of me to say. It wasn't my intention to say that literally, but I still said it as though I had some sort of authority to say it. So, sorry. It could find some success. And if it does, then the labels will settle. That's my prediction. I'm not a lawyer. My concern was that a lot of swing that the producers use for like boom bap and neo soul came from certain artists and certain drum breaks, like James Brown, Clyde McFadder, Melvin Bliss. Couldn't they potentially sue a lot of boom bap producers? Couldn't the pioneers of trap beats sue us because we trace the use of, if we can trace, and I think we could trace the use of 808 claps and 16th note hi-hats and 32nd note hi-hat rolls and triplet rolls back to some pioneers. Couldn't we, whoever did it first, if there wasn't someone who did it before them in the same way, they could claim ownership of those patterns. Blues riffs too. There's a very famous blues riff. There are multiple famous blues riffs. If they figure out who, maybe the statute of limitations on that has run out, but I don't know. I don't know how that works. I think all it would take is someone proving that they were the originator of a distinct enough rhythm. And if someone can't offer proof that they weren't, then they win. I'm sure it's more complicated than that. But after listening to the track that Dr. Luke got sued for, I think it's Slippery. And, I tweeted yesterday, and this was I'm surprised I didn't get jumped on as more than I did for the tweet. But a lot of producers are saying, yeah, I'm the original. I don't have to worry about any of this ever. I make everything from scratch. I don't think anyone's making anything from scratch. If you make a beat in standard 4/4 time and your kick lands on the downbeat and your snare or clap lands on the second and 4 counts, you've copied a pattern. You just have. That pattern has existed forever. And that's fine. I think these rhythms exist for a reason. They've survived for centuries in our DNA. And every genre is defined by its rhythm. Reggaeton is an extreme case of this because it's a very specific rhythm over and over again. But it's not the only genre that's defined by a very distinct rhythm. Polka, waltz, a lot of traditional musics in various cultures, Latin America, in Asian countries, that's just how it is. There's always a chance that by coincidence or by accident or by mistake or subconsciously, you could reprogram a drum pattern that infringes on someone's copyright. Now, the lawsuit isn't over yet. The federal judge that's overseeing this case made it clear that there are solid arguments on both sides. People are talking about there's no case, they're going to throw it out. This has been going on for years. I think this started in 2020. And I think something that could complicate this lawsuit, though, would be the existence of this drum pattern and other music before and during and after the creation of Fish Market. So, like, I was playing, shout out to the Black Men's Coalition. I was playing an event there, and I was reminded, because DJ Box was also there DJing, and he played the Womack and Womack song, Baby, I'm Scared of You. There's that drum pattern, and that came out years before Fish Market. It wasn't exactly the same because it didn't contain all of the kind of rhythmic extras, but the basic reggaeton beat, the basic Fish Market rhythm was in that track. And then there were these two other rhythms from Jamaica, Bam Bam rhythm and Pounder rhythm, which are similar to dancehall instrumentals today. I mean, I think they sound more identical and even identical to modern day reggaeton. So I don't know if they're getting sued, but I feel like that could complicate things for Steely and Clevie. And just to end, because I've been doing a lot of talking, I want to conclude with something that the Urban Islands article reads. So arguments were also raised as to whether a Fish Market drum rhythm is protectable under copyright law, and that's the crux of this whole thing. And that would depend on whether it was original and taken or sampled from someone else. A question was also raised as to why the producers registered Fish Market in 2020 only, and why no lawsuit was brought against an earlier sampling by Dennis Halliburton in the 90s hit Pounder Rhythm, which used Fish Market's drum rhythm, which I don't know that they sampled it. I think people are throwing around the word sample very loosely. But those of you listening to this, if you're confused, I encourage you to just look up they're all on YouTube. Just look up the names of these tracks and you tell me. But ultimately, I think Steely and Clevie have a case. I think it's kind of anyone's guess who will win this. And I think if they win this case, then what? And it depends how they win. Do they settle or does it go to trial? I don't know. But every single reggaeton release would need to go through a sample clearance process. That seems like a lot. That could kill the entire genre. It's just not realistic. Or would there be some type of blanket agreement? Like anytime you use that drum loop, you just automatically cut these two producers in. That also seems weird. Would they be happy with a settlement and then just agree not to take further action? What about other dancehall producers? Could they file similar lawsuits after the fact? It's complicated, but I think on the one hand, they need some recognition and something, some compensation, something for being pioneers. But do we do it at the expense of future creativity? So that's the question that I want to end on.
My thoughts are pretty much the same. I feel like it's a fascinating case. I feel like people were trying to oversimplify our assessment when they were critiquing us, as if we just read a Billboard article and then started talking about it. Like we were both, Payne, you've done a lot more research than me now looking at the journals, but I was going back through similarly and looking at other cases that were notable, that had been tried. And I felt like there were distinctions with this case that showed that there was some sort of precedence that was trying to be set, which is what we were talking about. This is going to impact the music industry. People are, I think, one, some people are nervous. Two, some people didn't understand the full angle we were coming from because they just watched the clip online instead of hearing like the full thought process that we vetted. And so they heard the like shorter, more dynamic clickbaity moment. And then they were like, you guys don't know what you're talking about. And Payne having a huge amount of reference for the genre as a producer and a fan for a lifetime. And then me similarly, not even similarly, lesser fan, but still a fan, having worked with reggaeton artists. That's that people don't know, like some of the first real money that I made in music was working with a reggaeton artist. Like he was the first artist that I ever got syncs with. He was the first artist that I ever had traveling internationally to go all over. So Yeah, I think it's a really fascinating case. It's unfortunate either way, because I do feel like, as somebody who daily comes against appropriation and frustration around that, this is something that it's like, man, I want them to be absolved and honored. But there are so many points that people brought up, especially like, why was this brought up in 2020 suddenly? Why is it only a certain amount of songs? And I don't know. So it's an interesting case. I think if anything that you can take from this, be curious and get outside of the bubble of just the things that you care about. This may not affect your day to day, every day, but it does affect the music industry. And if you're a producer or an artist, there are implications to you, or there's potential implications that this could carry if it does go through court. It may settle, who knows? It may go on for the next 5 years and be thrown out. We don't know, but I think it's always beneficial to see what's going on in and around the industry that you call home.
Knowing that the pioneers of a genre deserve compensation versus being worried about what that could mean legally for all musicians moving forward, and just knowing how complicated, rhythms are passed down in our DNA. A lot of people were saying on Twitter, a lot of people were chiming in and saying, hey, I'm African, this Congolese genre that has that same rhythm. I'm just like, well, this is deep. We're getting into history and anthropology, and all of our ancestors had these rhythms that we now today enjoy. We didn't create them. Even if we changed them up and modernized them and used our technology, we didn't invent them. You know what I mean? We're not the people who started music foundationally. So what could that mean? Copyright law and courts are, in the grand scheme of human history, incredibly new. And the music business as we know it didn't apply centuries ago. So it's tough. That doesn't mean I'm saying people shouldn't participate in the music industry and get compensated. They absolutely should. It's just a matter of how, and man, how far have we gone in this whole monetization and ownership of music and ideas and so forth. It's a mess.